Welcome, my dears, to Crowned and Chaotic, the only historical corner of the internet where corsets are tight, wigs are taller than your ex's ego, and the royals utter disasters in embroidered trousers. Tonight, we unravel a tale so extra it makes Bridgerton look like a tax seminar. Picture thunder, picture velvet, picture a grown man stabbing himself because of feelings. Yes, this is the story of the time George IV, Prince of Wales, said, "You know what this tantrum needs? A sword." Because this is Blood on the Velvet, the night George IV stabbed himself, dramatically and in satin. Picture it, London, 1788. The rain is doing its best Bronte impression outside Carlton House. Thunder cracks, lightning flashes. Somewhere a powdered footman drops a tray of crystal goblets, and in the middle of all this stands the most extra prince Britain has ever produced, George Augustus Frederick, Prince of Wales, 26 years old, and deep in his "I'm not like other royals" phase. He's standing alone in his chamber, but not just any chamber. This is Carlton House, the architectural fever dream of a man who decorated every room like it might be visited by Marie Antoinette and Liberus on the same night. There's damask everywhere. There are plaster columns that support nothing. There's a life-size portrait of George himself dressed as Henry VIII, because subtlety is for the commoners. And our boy is not okay. Debts, drama, and daddy issues. Triple threat. To the world, George is the fairest gentleman of Europe, the human glitterball of a late Georgian society, but behind the embroidery, the lace cuffs, the smug grin, pure chaos. Let's review. He's £600,000 in debt, which is like burning down Paris and replacing it with a casino made of wigs. He's secretly married to Maria Fitzherbert, a twice-widowed Roman Catholic, which is basically high treason with a garter belt. His father, George III, thinks he's a spoilt brat. Parliament thinks he's a national embarrassment. The tabloids think he's a bloated cartoon of vanity, and honestly, they're not wrong. And the public, they call him the Prince of Wales. Yes, Wales, because he's getting chonky. And worst of all, he's bored. He's gambled, he's cavorted, he's commissioned portraits of himself as Caesar. Nothing helps. His soul is an empty goblet, and he's too lazy to refill it. The slicing herd round the palace. And so, sometime during that stormy night, George grabs a ceremonial sword off the wall, something given to him while he was still cute and had cheekbones, and plunges it into his own chest. Yes, he stabbed himself in the chest, with a sword, wearing silk, probably near an expensive chaise lounge. Now, let's be clear, historians don't agree on how deep the stab went. Some say it was barely more than a dramatic paper cut. Others claim it was deep enough to warrant an emergency blood mop. Either way, there was blood. There was a collapsed George, and there was a valet absolutely losing his powdered mind. Valet, "Oh God, your Royal Highness, what have you done?" George, probably, "It's called a mood, Jonathan, look it up." Damage control, Georgian style. Now, a prince trying to unalive himself is already a lot, but in 1788, it was a constitutional nightmare. Because guess who else was losing it? King George III. Papa George was in the early stages of his own epic mental breakdown, so the image of the king losing his marble and the prince stabbing himself in a puddle of regret, not ideal for national stability. The court panicked. The spin doctors rolled in. The official diagnosis, sadness, which is Georgian for, "We don't want to talk about it and please don't ask." The press was bribed, the wound was bandaged, and by morning the entire thing was buried under a pile of monogrammed denial. But why did he do it, besides being extra? Let's not pretend George did this over one thing. No, darling. It was a cocktail of dread. He couldn't marry the woman he loved. He was drowning in glittering debt. He hated his job before he even had it. His public image was a meme with gout. And his family tree was basically a tangled wig of resentment. In short, He was a sensitive soul trapped in a wig-wearing train wreck. This wasn't just a cry for help, this was a cry for theatre. A cry for, "Look at me, Daddy!" A cry for, "Why must I be the symbol when all I want is to be a sad poet in brocade?" And the answer, of course, was, because you're the heir to the British throne, and this is not a Jane Austen novel. The aftermath: vanity, velvet, and vices. George survived, because of course he did. Drama queens rarely die young. But something changed. The man who once dreamed of passion and poetry now turned to laudanum, the TikTok of Georgian pain relief. Brandy, in such amounts it's surprising that his liver didn't declare independence. Mirrors, because if the world won't love you, at least you can. He became king in 1820, finally, after a painfully long wait, and by then the prince who once sobbed over forbidden love had evolved into a bloated tyrant with a tiara-sized ego and a passion for pastel upholstery. He hated his wife, fought with his parliament, dodged public appearances, and basically invented the concept of managing your reputation via soft lighting and filtered portraits. The Velvet remembers. The room at Carlton House where it all happened, long gone, torn down, whitewashed from royal memory like a stain on a silk waistcoat. But the story lingers, whispered in biographies, hinted at in court memoirs, occasionally shouted by gossipy museum guides who've had a long day. But the night George IV stabbed himself is rarely taught in schools. It doesn't fit the royal narrative. Too messy, too human. But maybe that's the point. Even the first gentleman of Europe had a breaking point. Even kings-to-be can cry on the upholstery. Even the most glittering crown sits heavy on a bleeding chest. George didn't die that night, but something in him did. He'd wanted to be a lover, an artist, a man remembered for more than waistlines and wigs. But instead, history remembers him as the bloated, brandy-soaked king who threw tantrums over coronation chairs and crushed on Beethoven. But for one night, one dramatic, sword-wielding night, he was raw, real, and terrifyingly human. So here's to you, George. You were messy, you were moody, you were a glitter-soaked man-baby with the emotional range of a collapsing sofa. But damn it, you made history entertaining. And so ends our tale of tantrums, taffeta, and traumatic self-stabbing. George IV lived to pout another day, but the Velvet never forgot. If you've learned anything today, let it be this: never underestimate the emotional instability of a man in satin. And if you enjoyed this glittery descent into royal madness, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that bell like it's a summoning a powder footman and your emergency laudanum. Until next time, keep your wigs high, your scandals juicy, and remember, history wasn't always classy, but it was always chaotic. This has been Crowned and Chaotic, signing off with a dramatic sign and a blood-stained monogrammed hanky.